Let's just go.
All right.
All right, we're live.
Hello, hello, everybody.
Hello, hello. We're live.
Are we live? We live. We're just waiting for everybody to join up, if you're wondering what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Let me mute my live stream here so we can see what's going on. Thank you guys for bearing with us here. We are just getting all set up. I'm Kevin. Kev, EOS Go. You've seen me around probably.
Hey, we have a Vegito in the chat. Welcome, Vegito.
Vegito.
Is that like Vegemite? Have you heard of Vegemite?
I've heard it's terrible. I've never actually tried it before, but some of our Australian friends might know more about it, I would think.
What is it, like supposed to be the vegetarian version of Spam or something?
I mean, if that's the case, it sounds horrible. But, I don't know. I haven't been to Australia, so I mean, I'd love to go down there sometime, meet the EOSphere guys and whoever else is. They're holding that huge meetup tour right now, as far as I know. EOSphere. They're going all around Australia.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah. Let me send out a link real quick, and then we're gonna do this. Get started. We have Dan coming on soon.
Yeah.
Dan Calinescu.
Yeah, Dan. Not the Dan, but a Dan.
Hey, the other Dan. We can call him that. All right, so let's go ahead and get this rolling. My name's Kevin. You've seen me by Kev and Kevin Wilcox, EOS Go, and we are thrilled to be here. This was a kind of a decision we made when we were in Blacksburg last month. We went up there, as many of you have seen. We went to go talk to Dan and Thomas Cox. We'll see Thomas's video later in this show. And it this kind of came about that we needed to try something a little different, perhaps. You know, we've been doing the forums, and we love doing out the news, and just basically connecting the community is what we're all about. And so we figured this would be a good opportunity to further that mission. So I am Kevin. Bluejays, you're up.
Hey, Kevin, thank you. Yeah, so as Kevin said, we envisioned this show a few months back, and it seems like such a long time ago, really, but it was not that long ago. And we really wanted to get out here and bring some of the news public presented in a way that is neutral. And we'll get into all of this. Kevin, did you want to start with intros, or did you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead, take it away.
Okay, so I'm Bluejays, guys. I'm in the chats. I mostly off during the days as I work full time as a project manager doing data analysis as well. I have about 15 years in the IT industry, and I'm formally trained as a software engineer. I work for a Fortune 500 company, and that's what keeps me busy during the day. So mostly I'm on the chats on the evenings and weekends, and one of the reasons why I sort of was appealed to this project EOS is because coming from a software engineering background, I saw so much maturity in what block.one and Dan were doing, especially Dan, where you know he sort of develops a product, makes it the best that he can, and he iterates and he moves on. The products aren't perfect, but he figures things out. He moves on, and some people see that as a downside. I see that as adapting and evolving, and those are the types of traits that I see and appeal to me as a software engineer. And what he's done is he's created working products that are being used, and to me that was just very appealing. And I love EOS, and you know, when we went up to Blacksburg, I just had more and more fun with Kevin and making these videos, and it's a passion at this point in time. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Kev?
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up really well. So my background, I live in North Carolina, United States, and I am an optician by trade. I stumbled across cryptocurrency in August of 2017. I'm a newbie, if you should say so. So I was looking at the mainstream media one day, I think it was CNBC, and I found that Bitcoin Cash had forked off of Bitcoin, and it was big news because there was free money being given out. So obviously I fell right down that rabbit hole, started learning about cryptocurrency. Right away, I could tell Bitcoin just didn't sound like it made sense because the transactions per second, they had all kinds of issues. It sounded like it was going to be a hard time. You look at the Bitcoin Cash fork, obviously they're having a very difficult time trying to scale that, so on and so forth. So like anybody else, I started researching all the projects, all the altcoins, what's the next 100 times or all that kind of thing. And as I looked around, none of the projects to me actually made sense. I don't think I can ever go to my mom and say, hey, mom, you need to pay fees. You need to download this wallet. You need to input your private key. You need to do this and that. She'll never figure that out. I mean, she's a cool lady. She's a nurse, but she just can't, she can't do all that. So when I came across EOS, which the first time I heard about it was in August, and I had heard it was a scam from Reddit. Thank you, Reddit. And so I discounted it right away. And then in October, somehow I came back around on it. And as soon as I watched Dan's consensus video from 2017, when he first presented about EOS and he gave the introduction, as soon as I heard all the things he was saying about feeless transactions, about staking your tokens for bandwidth as opposed to having to pay fees for everything you do, everything he said, account recovery, basic things that users need, he already understood all this. Not only that, but he has a working proof of concept that's live. We all know about Steam and even BitShares, of course, but as soon as I found about EOS, it was over. And that was it. I said, this is the guy, this is the project. He is so far ahead of everybody else. I want to really just get involved in one project, and that obviously is EOS. Here we are. So I'm thrilled to be here. Bluejays and I, this is a passion project, as he said, and EOS Go we're just a neutral community organization, as a lot of you know by now, and we are committed to bringing the community together and doing the best we can. And part of this show, we're going to have interviews and news and everything else, but sometimes we won't be quite as serious because we found as we went to Blacksburg, like Bluejays said, we had a great time. We hung out, we had a couple drinks, and we found out we have some interests in common when it comes to Little John, things like that. So we won't drop that on you quite yet. But anyway, so we're gonna get over to Dan here shortly. There he is.
Hey, just in time, Dan.
Oh man, perfect timing.
Hey Dan, before we get to you, I just wanted to read for our audience just a quick statement about what EOS Go is and what our mission statement is, and we'll get right to you.
And real quickly, Bluejays, let's make sure we thank Katie Roman and also Top K-Pop. They're currently in the chat. They're moderating the chat, so if you guys get unruly, you have to answer to Katie and Top K-Pop. But Katie actually helped us write the mission statement, made it sound good. You know how she does that. And Top K-Pop has just been phenomenal when it comes to editing our videos and making us look good and setting up this show. So we can't thank them enough. So go ahead.
Yeah, so this is what we wrote down. EOS Go is a neutral community organization for informing and strengthening the EOS ecosystem. So up to and beyond the launch, we will continue to bring big value to the EOS ecosystem by bringing more of the same work which the EOS community has come to expect from us. So that summarizes basically what me and Kevin have put together here, and some of the other teams, our extended team, not only here but on the telegrams are here to do. We want to be that neutral source of information. We don't have any agendas. We just present the dapp developers, we present the block producers, and we just want to get this chain launched and basically make EOS the best that it can be. So leading with that, we got Dan Calinescu, who's based out of Romania, and it is 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that for him. Yeah. And he's got a great smile on his face for being 1 o'clock in the morning, I'll tell you that.
That's right. Hey guys, great to be on your show. This is really exciting. Thanks for kicking off with this. This is great. It's 1 o'clock, 1:08. But but we're fresh because we just launched. So we're still running out of that adrenaline. So I guess a little bit about me then.
Yeah, let's like we discussed, Dan. Let's do the who, what, where, why, and how, and we can go with that.
Okay.
Yeah. So just tell us about yourself and
Sure.
who you are and that stuff.
Sure. So I'm originally from Romania. My parents immigrated about 30 years ago. So my brother and I just follow along. That's a whole movie story in itself. And I lived 16 years away from Romania, 15 of those years in Toronto. And then 9 years ago, I decided to come back to Romania with my wife and children. We had 2 kids back then, and we have 4. So we settled in a city here in Romania called Cluj. This is the second biggest city, and it's affectionately called the Silicon Valley of Eastern Europe. I don't know if I like that, but it is definitely booming with, I think, over 500 software companies and so forth. So I studied at U of T, University of Toronto, computer science, majoring in software engineering. And I was a bit of a nerd when it came to stuff that now I realized I can actually use, things like computational complexity and stuff like that. So about 15 years ago, I had this decision to make whether I'll go in academia and become a prof or something like that, or entrepreneurship. And I just chose the startup route. I just always been building products. I've been building products since I was in high school. And I did run a few companies in Toronto. One of them was pretty successful. I exited a year after we started it because I made the personal decision of moving to Romania. And 2 years after I exited, the guys actually, my co-founders actually sold that company for a beautiful exit to a big company, to Zynga. So then what I did here in Romania, I actually started again. That was a mobile services company in 2008. So about a month after the App Store came out, we decided to build iPhone apps. We've been building apps at that stage for about 6 years. So we knew our stuff in mobile. So continued that here in Romania. I set up a company for a few years. Then I just kind of burned out a little bit with the little kids and all that. And that's actually part of the story in terms of managing parenthood, fatherhood, and startups. So I took a bit of break, went into some management. And about 3 years ago, I just kind of really questioned everything and whatever was in front of me, I kind of questioned. So I pretty much questioned the way developers learn. I think I must have interviewed hundreds of developers, hired dozens of them for my companies, for other companies, and so forth. And I just noticed a trend. The trend being that the way developers learn before they become developers is very different from the way developers learn on the job. Meaning, I was a TA in university, and I also did a lot of amateur teaching on the side back then. So I remember teaching was really all about you're taught to teach knowledge base, right? So you teach knowledge. So you teach things like, this is a variable and this is an array and so forth. And I actually blogged about this heavily on my blog. When I was 15, I was in grade 10. I pretty much flunked my first computer course because they would teach you about variables and arrays and even multi-dimensional arrays. Like, what's that? And then basically I just did not get it. And I started getting it when I kind of pushed myself to build a game. So you have this sort of a creative purpose, a meaning beyond the code. And I noticed that, even now, developers learn all the nitty gritty of what it takes to compile, write code and all that. But when it comes to actually product development and product, excellence, which is what users really care about, there's a big disconnect. So I kind of spent the last 3 years thinking about that. And what we're launching today is really the product of really that journey.
That's pretty cool, man. I think I saw your buddy in the chat, NS James, said he wants.
Yeah.
He said he wants you to have his babies. So.
You know what? I'll have scatter, man. I'll have scatter. scatter his baby, right? So yeah, as an entrepreneur, I guess you add your startups to your real baby. So I guess Carmel's my baby. So maybe Carmel and Scatter can make their own babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about Carmel, though. Like,
sure.
What is
so
the
Carmel?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Well,
I wanted to know where it's at in the development, and like it sounds like you're talking launch, right? So
yeah. So it's funny because you mentioned in the intro this concept of just launching and iterating that Dan likes, and I'm really a big fan of that. I think that we're beyond the agile age. So what I really like is launching bits and pieces of a product that do something, a little bit of functionality, and iterating on that. So what we wanted to do today is launch something and start building a skeleton for the features that we want to add to the product. So I don't want to kind of like just add them 3 months before we launch. So what we did, we actually launched the Carmel.io site. You can actually sign up. We have user registration on there. There's a lot of other stuff coming, and we just have a very simple sort of landing page with the links to the white paper and Telegram and all that, but even an actual dashboard, right? There's only one link in the dashboard, which is really us keeping you in the loop with what we have in terms of updates. But it is a web app. It's beyond just a simple landing page. And we're going to keep adding that on a weekly basis for the next pretty much until the end of the year. So what Carmel really is, it's the embodiment of pretty much what I believe in terms of how developers should learn. And I actually, I don't think I mentioned this to you guys. I actually wanted to get a T-shirt with this, but I didn't get around to it. But I do want to. I actually figured out a simple formula, an equation that depicts every single thing I believe in when it comes to development and maybe even life. So this is pretty huge. It really is really simple. It's H greater than M. That's it. Where H stands for humans and M stands for machines. So what I really, really, really believe in is that humans are always and will always be more valuable than machine. This is what I believe in. This is, you're in this noisy world, you're supposed to stand for something. And what I guess what we really, really stand for and what Carmel stands for is, I want to start with that. We stand for this idea of humans versus machines, right? So, I read so many stories about, I was just reading about Chinese factory workers after the whole Foxconn deal where they, in 2016, I think it was, they fired about 60,000 workers. And you hear all these stories more and more often now. And I heard stories of people killing themselves, suicides. People are really, really depressed. It really touches you as a human being when you're being told a machine is better than you. You're replaceable by machines. And even geniuses or genii like Stephen Hawking are really forecasting an era very soon, apparently, in their mind, where we're all going to be replaced by machines. Or best case scenario, I'll be R35992's slave. So to me, this is a shift in where we're going that cannot be overlooked. So, of course, as a father, but also as an entrepreneur, a tech guy, I just chew on this. I've been chewing on this for years, and I just, I want to do something about it. I want to do something about this concept of machines replacing humans left and right, machines being more important, machines being more valuable, and so forth. So I kind of dug deep, and I'm like, okay, so we have machines, right? And the people that are getting replaced are really the people that are on low tech jobs, right? Even higher tech jobs, higher intellectual jobs, like even surgeons and lawyers and accountants, but low tech. So you have jobs that can be automated by machine, even smart machines, AIs, right? I'm not talking about AI, right? Not autonomous, just regular AI. But one of the jobs that are, really, really hard to replace is programming. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about autonomous AI machines where they can potentially start programming themselves and so forth. They might get there, but if they do, that's the last thing they do, right? So what I realized that if we could teach a bunch of people to code, if we could give, and here's the thing, tech power, if we could distribute power in terms of technological power to people who don't have that today, I think we might actually have something on our hands, right? So if I go and here's 1 million people who are going to get replaced, what if I can actually teach you, or what if we can teach you as a community to program these machines, right? Even if your job's replaced by a machine, maybe you can keep a job programming the machine that replaced you, right? Because someone's going to program the machine. Someone's going to come up with an algorithm. So this was the vision, and it was really it's really in a way, you know, bigger than myself. It's bigger than a typical startup where you just create a SaaS product and you sell something. To me, it's bigger than, you know, stuff like online learning and video learning. And then I discovered blockchain. So I was just chewing on this. I was chewing on this for years, and I was working on the heart of the product. So the heart of the product is a product in itself. The heart of the product, the heart of Carmel, is another product called Chunky, which I've been working on for probably 2.5 years now. It's an open source software development platform. Think of Ruby on Rails, right? Think of something like that. That's a framework. This is a bit more complex. Think of maybe WordPress, okay? So for example, the site you see at carmel.io, that site is actually public. The source is open 100%. We're gonna open source every single thing we do on our GitHub profile. And if you look at that code, that's written in Chunky. And it's really cool. It can do a lot of stuff. So I started working on that for a while I was kind of chewing on this problem. I'm like, okay, I'm not exactly sure I'm going to take this. I'm not exactly sure I'm going to help a lot of humans, you know, get the skills they need. But I know I need to create something that makes it easier to get started. So I've been working on that. I started building apps. I'm actually teaching people one-on-one to use it. I'm even teaching my son to use it now. I want to really, yeah.
Dan, Chunky is a platform or a language, or both?
Yeah, no, it's a platform. It's a platform based on React. React is a framework that's pretty popular from Facebook, and it's based on a really cool modern JavaScript stack. So it has React, React Native. It's built on Webpack, Redux, and a lot of interesting things. The UI is based on Material, the Material components from Google. It has a pretty end-to-end stack. You may call it full stack. Maybe the better name might be end-to-end, where you can build right now. It also has integration with a framework called serverless. You can find out more about that at serverless.com, where it has an integration with Firebase, which is a real-time database from Google. And it has all these sort of front-end and back-end components that allow you to create an app so easily that personally, I haven't seen anything that easy before. So it's really, I created something that I wanted. So in order for you to build an app which has authentication, a backend, a front end, a mobile app, all that stuff, you can do it really, really fast. And it's really powerful. So I knew I wanted to create something much in the vein of Pascal, right? So Pascal was this language created, I think it was in the 70s by a professor. And the reason why he created it is because he wanted something to give developers, students to start with upfront. That's not, you know, just variables and all that. So for example, in Chunky, you can write a little bit of JSON, which is just text configurations, right? Even a really non-programmer can write that. And then if you want to get deeper, then you can write some JavaScript and so forth. But you can get started really, really easily, easier than you can get started with installing a WordPress, for example. And it launches things like your static website. You can run a blog. You can write whatever you want. So I've been working on this, playing with it, testing it with different people. But I knew something was missing. I knew I needed a way to get this into a lot of people's hands. And then that's where blockchain came in. So to me, blockchain is the story of me kind of building something chunky, working on a problem, chewing on a problem, and then kind of like praying for something to come up, you know? So to me, I've been in this for maybe about a year now. I see all this sort of trends of kind of just putting something out there just because it's on the blockchain. And the way I approach it, and I think this is the healthy approach moving forward that I would love developers to take. I really look at blockchain as the missing link in my story. right? The thing that was missing for me to get this to where it needs to be. I need this to be bigger than myself. I don't want to be the only one teaching people. I wanted to build a community. So the community aspect is huge. It's huge. And I wanted the community to be autonomous, self-sustained. I don't want to have my company or myself or a third party or whatever manage this thing. So where do you find a technology that allows you to build a decentralized system, right? With no third party. And of course, there's got to be an economy because no one's going to be incentivized to create challenges and tutorials and so forth. And this is how I got into blockchain. So
how did you Dan, how did you find EOS? You have a pretty good story surrounding that.
Yeah. So basically, as soon as I find blockchain, obviously Bitcoin's first thing, right? Then I got into Ethereum. I looked at Solidity. I understood the idea of currency versus smart contracts pretty fast. That makes a lot of sense. And I saw the opportunity of creating really scripts, right? Which I guess that's the idea behind smart contracts, but they were so limited. And then I discovered Steam, right? So I discovered Steam before I discovered EOS, and I got onto every single thing I could find on Steam. I read every developer thing. There are even bounties for people developing stuff. Dan Larimer wrote a post, I think maybe 2 years ago, and I read that a few times about his sort of thought on how you could potentially use Steam to build sort of on top of it, kind of like a protocol. So I even actually attempted to do that. I looked at a code. I looked at what other developers did. I joined Steam. I was getting ready to create just kind of like a product. And then I discovered EOS. I discovered it. I can't remember how exactly, but I discovered it probably through, I think I discovered it through Steam. Someone posted something somehow, and I started reading articles. And this was probably July, something like that, last year. And to me, blockchain is completely another universe than cryptocurrency. So to me, when I look at cryptocurrency, and I try to avoid that word, and blockchain, I'm 100% excited, 110% excited by blockchain. Cryptocurrency, to me, I'm not excited about it. I invested in EOS because I believe in it. I did not invest in anything else, to be honest. My brother, my family, even my mom invested in Bitcoin. I did not. I just really feel that EOS is going to be, to me, the way I look at EOS, and I'm going to write about this recently, I think the way EOS will, I don't know if they will, I hope they will, and I hope people like us can do something about that, but I think the potential is there to become the greatest technology of the next decade. I believe EOS has the potential to become bigger than AI, bigger than virtual reality, bigger than anything that quantum computing is an exciting one for me, but I don't think it's going to be commercial in the next 10 years, or maybe I'm wrong. But I really believe blockchain technology as a platform. And right now, this is the only one that aims to deliver. I know Telegram is trying to deliver on that. Good luck with that. I don't know if they will. We'll keep our eye on that. But looking what Dan has achieved with BitShares and with Steam, and looking at the code, I tried the code myself, and we're still trying it, and we're still playing with it. Looking at his technology choices, he was debating between WebAssembly and something else, and looking at the way he thinks. I like what I'm hearing, and I like what I'm seeing, and I really, as a, let's say, a developer, architect, and whatever roles I had so far, I've been trained to look at how people develop software, and I like a lot of what I'm seeing. I think the trick with it is to build the right healthy community around it, around the concept of blockchain developers, not just around the concept of cryptocurrency, because to me, cryptocurrency is 0.01% what EOS can do. This is not Ethereum. This is not Bitcoin. This is really, to me, it's the new Amazon cloud. It's the new serverless cloud. If you look at the way the internet has progressed, you had a mainframe, right? Then it got smaller, and then you had the PCs, and then you had basically companies like VMware that just killed the whole industry by virtualization. And now you have Amazon Lambda and things like that, where you basically have no servers. Well, basically what we want to do is go beyond serverless. Serverless in the industry is maybe 3 years ahead of its time. So most people don't even know about serverless, don't even use serverless. Amazon Lambda is still building momentum. My prediction, let's say if you put a gun to my head and you say, okay, make some predictions. In my mind, I see maybe 3 years until most of the IT industry start using serverless type infrastructure, because I used to be a Linux a sysadmin, so I know my way around this stuff. It's not about not knowing, but man, why would I spend hours and hours configuring when I just press a button and just, okay. So what's the next step? What's the next step? It's blockchain, right? So to me, right now, Carmel, because we don't have the platform yet, but I want to give grandma features, right?
Yeah.
I'm using a serverless cloud with Amazon Lambda and with Firebase. But as soon as EOS gets its stuff together, I'm going to start migrating that. So the user experience for Carmel is going to be pretty much the same. So when EOS gets that, guys, and I'm predicting somewhere next year. Even if they launch this year, I think somewhere next year is going to be maybe ready for production. It's going to be so disruptive. I mean, I know Dan's using IPFS for the file system, and IPFS is huge already, but it's so cumbersome to use. If he figures that out, and he figures out authentication as well, man, I mean, this is your Amazon Lambda on steroids, right? For pretty much free or for peanuts. So that's why I think this is going to be huge. It's going to be insane.
You're really exciting NS James there in the chat. I never heard him say when moon before, but he just said it. So I think you are speaking, you're preaching to the choir over here. Tell us more about, let's do a dive into Carmel, because a lot of folks have looked at your white paper. It's a phenomenal white paper. It really reads well,
guys.
And it relates well to everybody, every token holder, anyone who's trying to get involved in blockchain or learn about software development. You break it down. I mean, you take it down to the beginning and you let grandma get involved. So let's go into this a little bit, learn more about it.
Sure. So it's actually funny. I mean, maybe not funny, but it's exciting because for the past few years, I actually worked on a way of telling a story, a product story. We're actually calling it. There's a method I came up with. I'm calling it fluid innovation thinking. It's based on. I'm just gonna kind of give you a bit of context. Basically, neuroscience. In the 60s, they've proven that we have two types of intelligence, right? So if you look at the human intelligence, you have crystallized intelligence and you have something called fluid intelligence. This is just a basic fact. It's pretty much undisputed in neuropsychology. So crystallized intelligence is the intelligence that we all accumulate by just piling on facts. So for example, if you go on trivia games, what's the capital of blah, 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 you have crystal intelligence. It turns out I don't have that much of that intelligence. Actually, my kids just taught me. I'm going to go crazy insane here, and I'm going to put myself on the spot, but I don't care. I just learned last week that the Pacific Ocean is the biggest ocean. So I'm pretty embarrassed. But honestly, anyways, the point is I just keep forgetting. I have this ridiculous memory. So I pretty much have to focus a lot on fluid intelligence. So fluid intelligence is the ability of coming up with spontaneous solutions to problems without prior knowledge, right? So for example, you get dropped in the middle of a city you've never been in, you gotta take a cab to, or like at the subway, you have no idea, you can't speak the language, go, right? So people with low fluid intelligence will kind of panic, sweat, and so forth. So basically, I think entrepreneurship is all about fluid intelligence. Entrepreneurship is all about not having prior experience, especially when it comes to things like blockchain, guys. I mean, you know, who's going to tell you what's good and what's right? So fluid intelligence is really at the base of how I told the story, using this concept of fluid innovation thinking. And at the bottom of that is building a story that keeps on developing. So I call it a fluid story. And the story is, I really love the Lord of the Rings. So I call that a meta story. So I've built this model of building a product story around the meta model of the Lord of the Rings. So for example, in the Lord of the Rings, the hero is not Frodo, and the hero is not Gandalf, right? The hero is Aragon. The hero is the guy who, in the first movie, he's like a bum in a bar, right? And then you go through the whole story, and the trilogy ends with him wearing a crown, with him being on top of the world, with him being the winner, him being the king. So the way I look at a product story, and specifically Carmel, but any product story, the first question I ask, who's the hero? Who's the Aragon of my story? Who is he today? Like, who is my hero today? Version 1 of my hero. Who do I want the hero to be at the end of going with us in this journey? And then I just lay out the hero journey from version 1 to version 2. So to me, the hero has got to have a name, man. It's got to be, the hero is going to be tangible. So I give my hero name Chris, and a bit of a profile. And my hero today is a person who struggles because they have a family to feed, and they watch the news and they see those Chinese guys killing themselves, unfortunately. And that could happen everywhere. They have a lot of workers, but that could happen in Romania. That could happen maybe in the States. I don't know. That could happen everywhere. So my Chris guy cannot sleep at night. All right. So the question I always ask myself is, after who's the hero, what keeps your hero up at night? So maybe for other people building their products, it'd be worthwhile answering this question: what keeps your hero up at night? So my hashtag for Carmel is actually hashtag helping Chris sleep at night, right? That's and cool. the way I'd help Chris sleep at night is helping him not worry about the future, not worry about not having enough cash or enough whatever dignity to feed their family. So that's really the context of my story, and I wanted to start right there, hero focused. I was really surprised, guys, recently when I did some research on the product management. It turns out, if you actually do some studies on this, there's really not a lot of customer focused, customer oriented companies. And I thought they all are, right? But actually they're all product oriented. We all want to sell something. We all talk about us. When you look at value propositions, everyone talks about we, I, me, right? Our product, we are this, we are that. So I really, really wanted to make sure the first sentence in the white paper is not we, is not I, is not me, it's Chris. So the first word in our white paper starts with our hero. And the second sentence is why Chris can sleep at night. So everything goes down from there for us.
So Dan, the reason why Chris can sleep at night is he's going to learn better on Carmel, right?
So he hopefully will sleep better at night after he learns with Carmel, yeah.
Okay, how's Carmel going to do that? What's your plan to make Carmel the go-to, better than Udemy or any one of those other learning platforms?
Great question. And just so you know, before even attempting this, I actually spent quite a bit of time on Udemy and even on Pluralsight and stuff. So I think why Carmel? Because right now there's really to my knowledge, no platform that is skills based. So if you look, I listened to a podcast recently with Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO from Facebook. I guess pretty well known for her HR capabilities, and I completely agree with her when she said you need to hire for skills, right? So the best HRs, the best companies hire developers for skills, but the education is not skills based. So you can see the disconnect. So if you go to Udemy today, what will Chris do? So Chris sits in front of the computer, watches a video, presses pause, rewinds, presses forward again, pauses it, and then he's on his own. He has to bring up his editor, he has to bring up his terminal, and he's still lost. Best case scenario, here's a Hello World app, or here's a template for like a Flappy Bird game, and redo that. And I have friends, guys, I'm actually running meetups here locally, and we're working with developers closely, and there's people who have actually spent time and even money going through such sort of educational models, and they're struggling to get a job. They're struggling to get a job because developers cannot build real products with that kind of education. So if you need to hire a developer, I don't care if you aced that course. I don't care if you got an A. All I care about is, can you build this website? Can you build this mobile app? Can you build this API? And education models right now, in terms of Pluralsight, Lynda, Udemy, edX, whatever you want, I looked at, I think the top 14, they're over like 300 million in terms of investment, and every single one of them, there's actually even a blockchain one. They're on Ethereum, so I have no idea how they're going to pull this off, but they raised the money. I think it's called Bit Degree. They pay you to learn, which is a dumb mistake, by the way. I mean, it's a big mistake, because I think developers are not incentivized when they get paid. I think they're incentivized when they need to pay, and that's a big problem. But it's all based on videos, and it just doesn't work. So I think, why Carmel? Because we're not based on videos. We're based on micro tasks. So for example, as a project manager or a product manager who works with issues, if you look at our GitHub repository, for example, you would see, over 60, 70 issues there. A lot of those issues, most of those issues are not expressed as technical items, right? So for example, a project manager who might not be technical, or a client might say, hey, give me a logging screen on my mobile phone where I have a password and an email and a name. Do it, right? So that is a verbalization of a non-technical verbalization of a requirement. So today, this is how work gets done. This is how developers get tasks. But you don't see that in videos. You don't see that in Udemy. You don't see that in Pluralsight. You see things like write this Redux action and create this array and write this API. So they're all based on the code. They're all based on the lines you write. So if you look at chunky.io, or the tagline I came up with is, you gotta think beyond the code, right? So I think Carmel is the only platform right now, probably not the only one in the future, but if they copy it, then that's a good thing for us, I'd say, who takes the developer beyond the code. So we want to create these tasks, we call them challenges, right? Micro challenges. Let's say they take you between half an hour to 2 hours, similar to basically the way you'd get tasks at the developer in your issue tracker. Do this, do that, do this, right? Now, you start off by having no clue how to do that, right? So what do? You follow a tutorial, a challenge, step by step, on how to do that little thing. And to do that, you don't have to memorize things. You don't have to watch 1,000 videos. You just have to start opening up your editor. You start typing, and if you have the Carmel desktop app installed, which will come up soon, you'll be able to download at some point, the app will actually monitor what you type. You'll monitor your changes, and as soon as you actually start getting that right, then you basically get your reputation points on the platform. And when you get that, recruiters, development manager, other developers can actually clearly see what you're good at. Chris can build a site, deploy it on an Amazon bucket, and host it on CloudFront. Chris can create a logging screen on a mobile app using beautiful font, whatever. Things that people can understand. So if you go to carmel.io/your username in the future, we want that to be kind of like the third place where recruiters look in addition to GitHub and LinkedIn for developers, maybe the first place at some point, because you should be able to see a beautiful story with a timeline of what Chris has learned, well, the user has learned. With your reputation points, you can follow Chris. You can even ask Chris to learn certain specific things that you might be interested in as a recruiter. So imagine you want to follow Chris and say, I kind of like what he does, but if he knew this thing and this thing and this other thing, I would hire him. Hey, Chris, would you be interested in learning those things? And then if you are, come in for an interview. Do you think Chris would like to learn that? Of course. So we're pretty much building, a bridge between developers, aspiring developers, development managers, entrepreneurs and business owners who need the work, and recruiters. So these are kind of like the plots of the story around Chris. And honestly, right now, there's nothing like that, guys. And putting it back in the EOS storyline, the idea of tokens is something that no one can do right now. because there's really no, Udemy is not on a blockchain and so forth. They might one day, who knows? And the idea of a token came to me before thinking of the blockchain, because I have a big background in mobile games. I worked with a bunch of games in the past, and this concept of gamification is kind of entrenched in the way I think about incentivizing people to use products. So the idea of a token came to me years ago when I really discovered this problem as a dev manager. You have a budget as a development manager, and then you have a bunch of developers. You need to spend that money to get your developers, to learn things, get them smarter, get them to grow. And every single developer manager on this planet, guys, cannot tell you the ROI on their training budget. They cannot. So they buy. So here's what you do: you buy books, you send them to conferences, you get trainers in house, you send them to out, third-party training. You do whatever you can, and obviously you buy them subscriptions to Pluralsight and Udemy and Linda, and then a month later, like, I just spent $2,000 on this guy. Okay, what do you know? How much smart are you? How much quicker are you? How much more productive? What do you know? And because there's no such thing as a measure of skill set, there's no such thing as the equivalent of a kilogram for weight, the equivalent of a mile for length. There's no such thing as a unit of measure for skill set for devs. We're lost. So imagine a dev manager on Carmel saying, I spent $1,000 on Carmel tokens. I ask my developers to learn these things, and so forth and so forth. And a month later, I looked at Johnny, and Johnny is $200 smarter and 300 experience points smarter because he learned this and this and this and this.
That's amazing. That's
yeah,
crazy.
man.
That's cool.
So
yeah. So basically,
Dan,
you get your ROI.
It's such a unique proposition that you have here, and it's really speaking to I think that's speaking to a lot of our viewers as well too. And people in the chat. So when are you planning to launch? Like what is your timeline here?
Right. So basically, we launched today.
Okay.
we launched the site today. So if you go to carmel.io, we have a backend on Firebase. We created an authentication chunk, right? Because that's how Chunky works. And we're gonna start launching features, I think, at least weekly until the end of the year. So the way we plan to do this is as follows. We're bootstrapping right now. So there's 3 of us right now. We're bootstrapping the crap out of this. I've been bootstrapping it for a long time. And we got to raise some funds to get it to where it needs to be. So what I want to do is we're starting this distribution model that took me months to come up with. And I think it's right for the next 25 weeks. And it's going to end September 3rd. And what we want to do, we're going to aim to launch a 1.0 version of Carmel by the end of the year. So that would mean December 31st at latest. I'll have to launch it before Christmas, but I'm just putting down December 31st as the hard deadline as I wrote it in the issue that's going to get into the white paper this week. And what we want to do is 25 weeks of a fundraising campaign with updates, continuous updates, continuous updates, continuous updates. The architecture is outlined in the white paper. We're going to do a hybrid architecture. So I'm not going to go all in on EOS because it doesn't have what I need yet. But as soon as EOS has it, without messing with the user experience, you're going to get it. So if you go to Carmel right now and create an account, it goes to our backend right now. But as soon as EOS has that, you know what? You're not going to know the difference. You're going to keep signing up. You're part of the blockchain. So what we want to do is raise enough money, launch a bunch of updates until September, and then as soon as we get that, then we want to create 1.0 by the end of the year, which will include the following: a desktop app that you can download on Mac, Windows, and Linux, of course built with Chunky, and then you're going to be able to see a list of challenges that you can take, and we're already creating challenges already, right? So we're gonna have challenges coming up nonstop. So you're gonna be able to take a challenge, click on a challenge, pay from tokens from your wallet, get that challenge going by creating the code that challenge requires on your desktop, submit your request, your solutions, and then basically get your reputation point. So you'll be able to do that by December 31st. You'll be able to also download the mobile app and request things like add challenges that you want to buy. We're still thinking about whether we want to let people create transactions from mobile and the web. I actually had a lot of questions with Nathan about that. Right now, I'm insanely paranoid about security, and right now I think, as of today, I'm only going to allow people to create transactions from their desktop, because as a developer, you live on your desktop anyways, right? But I think on mobile, you'll be able to kind of like follow people. You'll be able to like people. You'll be able to upvote challenges and authors, right, to bubble them to the top. So you're going to be able to see a top 10 or top 100 list of best authors and best developers and so forth. So basically, that's what you're going to get. You'll be pretty usable by the end of the year. And then what we want to do is raise enough money to put a team together and start building this as a community project for the next few years. And really, we're not selling anything. The business model is very simple. I'm not selling anything. It's 100% open source. I want to create a precedent of how I think software should work in the future. I think we shouldn't pay for software. Even the service should be built by the community. I think what we should do is 100% focus on community building. So to me, I want Carmel to be owned by people who contribute to it. So if you contribute to GitHub today, there will be we're going to have a stable inflation, fixed inflation, and we're going to use that money in something I call a fluid fund to pay people who add issues to GitHub, to create pull requests and so forth. And then we're also hopefully going to have enough money to do things like scholarships. This is a very dear thing to my heart. I really want to go to impoverished neighborhoods in this country and maybe other countries and actually establish Carmel training programs and get kids out of poverty, man. If we give them the skills to code, they just need an internet connection and they can code from whatever village and like get their mom and dad out of poverty. So this is what we're hoping we can do as of 2019.
Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And you mentioned the token. So, and going back to that token briefly, so it does it count as a reputation / identity, and it also tracks what the user has accomplished. And you mentioned that if a company bought $200 worth of training for an employee, and say Johnny earned 300 points worth, so it basically is the company able to track how fast Johnny is picking things up and learning?
100%. Yeah. So the token economy is still in progress. We're talking about it in our channel. So I invite everyone to join our channel on Telegram. I'm being super transparent about stuff that I'm still thinking about and we're still chewing on. So the token works as follows right now in terms of the way we see it. We're going to have one single token. I really want, again, simplicity to me is going to be, I'm going to be as paranoid about simplicity as security. So I love Steam. The 3 token model drives me crazy though. So I'd love to just have one single token. And then what you want to do is what we're going to do. And I described that in an issue in our community. As an author, you're going to be able to have a difficulty that you assign to your challenge. It's going to be 5 difficulties, right, from junior to expert. Based on that difficulty, there's a set points of experience points that the people will get if they complete it. So if you say this challenge is a junior challenge, if someone completes it, they'll get 5 experience points or something like that. So the experience points are really kind of like, think of it. The best analogy to an XP, to an experience point in Carmel, is really a Steam dollar, right? We want to fix it to a fiat, so an XP is going to be pretty much close to $1, right? So, but you're going to be able to only get that if you actually pay in token. So we have I don't want to call it a dual token model, but it is really the token, and the token releases experience points. So the purpose of it is to track everything. So that's why I love EOS because I don't want to have transactions only for purchases. I want to have transactions for many other different things. So the model with EOS I love because you just create messages between users. So what I want to do is have different types of transactions so that when a developer gets, and I was actually talking to Nathan about this, when a developer starts a challenge, I want to know if they failed it 3 times before, right? So I know Nathan was saying that he was actually more interested in people who failed it more times and got it because they show persistence. So every single time you do something, we want to create a transaction on the blockchain, and then that's going to be 100% transparent to everyone, right? So of course, employers, developers, your mom, everyone's going to see your progress, and we're going to come up with a beautiful UI to show you that progress. So things like you might even get badges. Congratulations, you didn't give up. You know, you're like, you don't have enough experience points to make it to the top 10, but maybe you'll make it to the top 10 people who earn the persistent badge or something like that. So we want to reward that because one of the things that happens, especially in the courses I was doing face-to-face, one of the biggest problems is that people get excited. Yeah, this is good, I'm going to program, and then they give up, right? Yeah. So we want to make sure we incentivize people to stay with it. And that's one way of doing it. So yeah, so everything's going to be public, all the transactions.
This is awesome, Dan. I just wanted to say, like, thanks for joining us today and making these announcements. It was really good to catch up on this. And like you said, if anybody's interested, join the Telegram Carmel Telegram chat, and we can post that in the chat or afterwards if we can find out and link that to you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys. This is awesome for you. This is an honor. And I hope this is the beginning of something great. It reminds me of 2008, and even before that, when the App Store came out, everything was new. The App Store came up with 500 apps. EOS probably wants to come up with 1,000. And what I love about the early beginnings of something great is that you can just have a lot of firsts, right? So this is our first sort of a chat, your first broadcast, I guess, my first announcement. And I think there's going to be a lot of updates from here on. So I'm looking forward to collaborating with you guys and following you. And I think this is the kind of stuff that we need to make sure that products like mine that want to take on the world benefit from a strong community. Because this, again, we're giving away the code, we're giving away everything. We need a community. So people like you are 100% part of the equation, and us developing the other side of the equation. So if you can find things like these, to collaborate, I think this is what's going to make it.
Thanks, Dan. I mean, amazing. Kevin, do you have anything else for Dan? It was a pleasure having you on, man. And like you said, it's a first for us, and we were glad to have you as our first guest.
I really appreciate it, guys. Really.
I have to say the same thing. Really, it's been great meeting you. And I just found out about your project last week. And Bluejays has been following you for a long time.
Yeah.
But it was James who turned NS James in the chat. Yeah. Everybody knows him from Scatter. He messaged me and he said, "Hey, Dan he's doing an amazing thing over here, and you should check it out." So,
well, shout out to NS James then. Thanks, brother.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks, and we look forward to working with you going forward and keeping and following your project and getting involved. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. You can.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye. We're gonna move on with the news, guys.
Cool.
Yep.
Kevin. So
yeah,
we've summarized basically a bunch of the news that has happened in the ecosystem for some time. I guess for the last week or so. And Kevin's going to go through that, and we're sort of just going to discuss it and see where our conversation goes and what our thoughts are.
Yeah, it's been an interesting last couple weeks, really, and so some of these news points have been very large, and they have sort of slipped under the radar a little bit. And the first one is Bancor that we'd like to talk about. So Bancor is one of those protocols that a lot of folks don't fully understand. It's a kind of a complicated algorithm, and basically, long story short, is Bancor will make it possible to easily convert between tokens on the EOS blockchain. So Bancor was working with Ethereum. I'm not sure with the status on how they're still doing that with Ethereum, but when it comes to all the different dApps, all the different projects like Carmel on EOS, you'll be able to seamlessly move back and forth between the different tokens between different dApps. Bluejays, I'm curious about your thoughts on Bancor. Tell me more about your knowledge on Bancor.
Well, so Bancor is just one of those applications that have been early to the game, and like you said, it was on Ethereum, and I think it's been out for over a year, and it has all of these different dapps on it, or tokens on there. So what I think Bancor brings is basically a link to existing projects who've been out there and who've been trying stuff on Ethereum, and is trying to find something that's better for them. I don't know if it's an alternative or something better. It's really up to the Bancor community to explain that. But is it a big deal for for EOS? I think it's a huge deal. Bancor is a mature product. It's got some very cool market making algorithms, and how to transfer one token to another. And when you do that, there's all sorts of financial, legal, uh, and legal things that you have to be concerned about. How many do you hold in? How many do you hold? How many do you deposit? How many withdrawals? You have to do all those balance sheet stuff at the back. And Bancor is just one of those projects that has been very integrated with a lot of other projects. So for them to be coming to EOS, I think is a big deal.
Yeah, and I just shared a link in the chat for the news release when Bancor came out. There's a couple quotes from Dan in there. They did misspell his name, but that's okay. They got the general idea. And Dan just describes it. The Bancor protocol, it's an elegant solution for liquidity. And basically that's the big thing, is it raises liquidity by providing market makers. I won't read his whole quote because a lot of it is a lot of big words, of course. It's usual Dan style. He's not providing any analogies in this quote, but auditable smart contracts is another thing. So obviously, and just like most things in blockchain, anyone can go in and audit the code and make sure it looks good and make sure there's no kind of shady business. You know how Dan feels about radical transparency.
Yep.
So Bancor just brings a whole new element to token liquidity between the different tokens in EOS. So it's a big news. It did go under the radar. It was on the 22nd. This news came out. It looks like about 4 days ago, and it's one of those things that will make a huge difference in the EOS ecosystem. But as of right now, of course, we don't know all the benefits yet. We can't realize all the benefits because the platform we're 3 months away.
And this news sort of came out when the market was the overall crypto market was sort of taking a retracement, and from a fundamental point of view, it's still a very strategic partnership, I think, for the EOS community, and as well as lending a lot of credibility to what EOS is doing, even pre-launch, for projects to start coming over pre-launch. It says a lot, and I think I don't know what you think about that, Kevin. Is that normal for other projects to create on a pre-launch project?
So that, I guess, to answer your question, sort of brings us into the next section of the news that we're going to talk about, which is EOSfinex. Bitfinex has declared that they are building their decentralized exchange on EOS. They do have Ffinex right now, which is the Ethereum version. It hasn't really taken off. As Brendan Bloomer likes to talk about, there are a lot of companies out there who have tried to build something on current blockchain platforms, and they'll build it and then they'll end up having to sit and wait to actually deploy it because it doesn't work or it's too expensive because of all the fees, whatever the case is. So EOSfinex was one of those examples where we're seeing a company that is determined to make some changes in the world with blockchain, and they're just looking for whatever platform they can find that will do the job. So it is a vote of confidence for EOS, of course. We'll share the link to the announcement here in the chat, but long story short, a lot of you know about this. Of course, Bitfinex, the largest exchange in the world, so they're going to bring that network effect over to EOSfinex. And
like you said, Kevin, it's a working product already. They're looking to get better by having a blockchain backend, and they have Ffinex out there, and for some reason they're now launching EOSfinex. So that says a lot. I mean, having a decentralized exchange on the blockchain is something like BitShares, right?
Yeah, well, that's the idea. So currently with centralized exchanges, and a lot of you know this, but we'll talk to everybody in EOS Radio. So this, and by the way, going back, this show is about connecting the community, and we want to make sure that we're accessible to everybody. So we will do some parts education, We may even include a segment in the future that involves asking questions, someone who's getting involved with EOS. I think it's easy for us to forget how steep the learning curve is for EOS. So occasionally we'll go back and explain things, but that hopefully it'll help all of us learn. And Bluejays and I, we're still learning ourselves a lot of things. So is Dan at this point, I'm sure. All of us are. So EOS, basically a decentralized exchange, will allow you to trade your funds directly from your own wallet. So you will not have to send all of your money over to some centralized company, which could get hacked, as we've seen, or they could lose your funds or possibly even steal your funds if it comes down to it. So with a decentralized exchange, BitShares is an example of that. They don't have the network effects, they don't have the liquidity, so it's very hard to trade on BitShares right now. I shouldn't say hard, it's just the market, you need more liquidity from more people buying and selling in the market. And Bitfinex certainly has that network effect. They can bring that to the EOS.
BitShares definitely shows that the technology is proven. And
yeah, and a lot of the questions, so everybody's asking about BitShares too. Like, will BitShares go over to EOS? And the answer is, how do we know, right? BitShares is decentralized. So Stan Larimer is Dan's dad. Stan has said a few times that he would like to see BitShares go over, and he's almost even said BitShares is going over. However, we have to remember that Stan does not have that power. He is the godfather of BitShares, but he doesn't have the ability to just make decisions for a decentralized entity. So as far as I know, they need to vote on it. I don't know the full process for how they would make that decision. I'm an EOS fan, so long story short is BitShares would probably benefit from coming over as well. Will they be able to compete with EOSfinex? I mean, that's a tough question to answer.
You just brought up a huge point too about making a decision. EOS is going to have governance, and we're going to have a way to make decisions. That's what Thomas Cox from block.one and a lot of the other people on Telegram are talking about every day, is how we can make this make decisions and arbitrate and also resolve disputes. And this is going to be a huge deal for EOS above something like BTS, BitShares, where, like you said, if you're trying to make a decision, or maybe they haven't, or gathering the votes to be able to make a decision. So that's something that's going to be very transparent within EOS, and also configurable down to the dapp level as well with governance.
Yes, and when it comes to governance fans, we have the sit-down interview with Thomas Cox is coming up here. We're going to play it for you. We have 2 parts, so it's about a 30-minute. It's about a 30-minute video in total, and we're going to play about 15 minutes today for you. And Thomas Cox talks all about governing the commons by Elinor Ostrom and how to share common pool resources. He takes current examples that we know of in the world and that are explained in governing the commons. And then they're using those examples. EOS, when it comes to Thomas and Dan, were the main folks developing the Constitution for EOS, or the base layer of the Constitution. So they're using these common pool resource examples to help develop the Constitution. And of course, arbitration is a big topic in the governance chat. We will let Thomas do most of the talking with that, with the video coming up. We'll move on to our next news piece here. Let's see, make sure we don't miss anything. So we'd like to go into the block producer discussion for a little bit. So block producers, for those of you who are not familiar, they're the ones running the servers who will be running EOS, essentially. They are elected officials, if you could put it that way. They are brought in, they're voted in by all of the token holders in the community. And last week we saw Fuzzy over at EOSTalk. They did an interview with the EOS New York block producing group. EOS New York, they have 3 employees right now. They have Kevin Rose, he is the head of marketing. They have Rick, and he is the head of the operations. And then they have William/Buddy, whichever name he prefers to go by. He is the technical lead for EOS New York. And they, everybody, a lot of people here probably know about EOS New York. They're very visible. They do a great job advocating for EOS. And I enjoyed that interview. I sat through it and listened to it, and I thank Fuzzy and everybody at EOSTalk for bringing on those guys and helping us learn more about EOS New York.
Yeah, EOS New York is just one of those block producers just exploded on the scene and made themselves visible, and I think they're going about it in my opinion anyways, they're just going about it a great way. They're bringing a lot of how do you say, respect to of what a block producer should probably be is somebody who's transparent and putting out there what their server resources are, and all of the details that we need to know as we vote and we sort of put together all of these block producer profiles, right, Kevin?
Yes. So we have started a document for any block producer candidate, and we've been advertising it in all the different chats. We are trying to collect a report for any block producer. We're trying to get a report for every candidate for the community. So we've received a lot of questions about who is running for block producer, who are all these companies or people. Everybody sort of expects at this point we should have more visible options. Well, EOS Go is taking on that responsibility. If you are a block producer candidate, please sign up on the form. We will link it, and also you'll see it around. We are also asking for objective rating criteria. So we're looking to help sort of sift through all the block producers, because so far we already have about 13 that have signed up in 2 days, and the deadline is March 6th. We may see 40 to 50 block producer candidates sign up in this first round only, and that number is only going to increase as we get closer to launch. So long story short is we want voters to be able to look at a long list of block producers and have some idea, make some kind of choice. We do not want any kind of opinion to sway the block producer. It's not up to us. We're not looking to make any opinions or judgments ourselves. We are looking for objective criteria. So, for example, I floated the idea of the number of people at an EOS meetup. For example, the EOS New York guys, they've had 2 meetups thus far. How many people they've had at those meetups as a ratio to how many people are at Ethereum meetups in the same city. And that could be one objective criteria. So EOS New York, they had very successful meetups. Maybe their ratio is pretty high. I don't know how big the Ethereum meetups actually are in New York City, but they might be able to, just on the visibility and the amount of effort they put into their meetup, we could make some kind of a small criteria. Now, of course, technical details are going to be very important, and we don't have the exact numbers yet from block.one. However, that brings us into the next part of our news segment. Just today, Charles from London, he is running for BP along with David Packman, and they're going to be a block producer. We'll announce more about that coming up in the report. But Charles is helping sort of collect data along with Eric, who's in Sweden, and they're looking to get hardware requirements and ask questions of Thomas. I'm reading straight from the thread right now. They're looking to, so they had the live video feed with Thomas Cox. He gave a presentation about what might be expected of block producers, and Charles is trying to collect all of the hardware requirements for block.one to help provide a level of granularity. So when block.one puts out these technical recommendations, block.one is asking for feedback as to what exactly should be recommended. And so the block producers need to get together. They need to offer any type of feedback about what they would like to note. How much RAM, how much storage disk, how much processing power, everything. So we'll link the thread. Please make sure if you are running for block producer, put in your thoughts. The deadline is March 2nd, and we will link the thread here in just a moment.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why we're sort of collecting all of these profiling questions is we want diversity in our block producer candidates. We want it just strengthens the network. So you have geographically dispersed block producers. You have block producers with different pieces of hardware. You have them on the cloud, on bare metal. This is just going to make the network stronger. So that's the main reason why we're doing this.
And Bluejays, I want to make sure you can still hear me. You can still see me.
Yeah, we can hear you, Kevin.
Okay, gotcha. Great. All right, very good. And you summed it up very well. We're going to move on to the next piece of news here. Fuzzy over at EOSTalk, he's been very busy. He just recently announced a couple of different projects. Now, Fuzzy, you may know from EOSTalk, also from Whale Shares. They're starting the new DAC. It's called EOS Angels, and there's more info to come on that. But if you'd like to know more, make sure you join the EOSTalk.io. They have a forums. Forums are over there, and also they have a Telegram chat. It's the EOSTalk Telegram chat. So one of the projects that Fuzzy announced today is called Project Milkbox. I'm saying. Do you know more about this, Bluejays?
That sounds about right. I believe the concept is about milk, being on a milk carton. Like back in the day, we used to have, I don't know if they still do it, but we had missing children on there. And that's the whole concept behind Fuzzy's dapp.
Yeah, he's looking to utilize blockchain to help track down children who have gone missing for any number of reasons, and there, of course, are some terrible things in the world as to why children go missing. Fuzzy has a lot of great ideas, and he's very passionate about the project. And if you would like to help, it is an open project, and he is looking for anyone who would like to jump in. Whether you are an accountant, you're a marketer, you're a developer, whatever the case is, I'm sure there's some way you could help. So go over to the EOSTalk channel and meet up with those guys. And that brings me over to meetups themselves. So EOS Meetups, always ongoing. There are a couple big ones coming up. There's one in Hong Kong. I'll need to get the date on that. And actually, Bluejays, you're helping with the Toronto meetup that's coming up, I believe.
Yeah, so Bluejays is not just a name that I chose randomly. I am sort of a baseball fan and spent some time in Toronto, and I'm helping bring up the Toronto Massive and basically get these people, get everybody in Toronto and the greater Toronto area, which includes places like Mississauga, places like Waterloo, which has a phenomenal university up there with a crazy smart computer science students. So just the type of people that we need as dapp developers. I think our meetup announcement, I think Daniel Keys pretty much launched the meetup yesterday, and we already have 50 members joined up in the meetup. We have also a Telegram chat for everybody in the Greater Toronto area, Waterloo, etc. So please ping me on the Telegram or link up with some others who may have know of that room. So it's getting started up very soon. And then we also have Aereo.io, which is that dapp project that's going to be healthcare on the blockchain. So healthcare and healthcare records are a big deal, privacy and all of those different concerns. And sounds like the blockchain is going to be perfect for that type of use case. So Aereo, the reason I bring them up is Aereo is going to help launch one of the meetups in the Toronto area as well. So they're going to be there. I believe they already did it in they co-hosted with EOS New York. So it's part of their marketing, and it looks like a great project. So that's about the EOS Toronto GTA meetup. I did see Ian Gregor Sansu in the Nairobi meetup, which was in Kenya, which was very interesting and put on by Bitcoin Kenya. I don't have much details about it, but if anybody does, please link it in the chat or follow.
Well, actually, I can tell you more about that. I have a little report from him here. So Ian Gregg works with block.one, and he and Ava went down to Nairobi, Kenya, and they spoke at a meetup down there. And so there's a small contingent of EOS fans in Nairobi, Kenya, of all places, and they had about 30 people. And Ian said here, let's see, they talked mostly about governance, and they actually spent 2.5 hours talking about governance. And then Ava, they took a lot of questions as well. There were a lot of interested folks asking about governance and how it will work on a blockchain. Now, in Kenya, there is a lot of corruption when it comes to court judgments. And let's see, Ava, let's see what else she said here. I had it all pulled up. And so basically, long story short, is the interest is very high in terms of finding a different way to be free from the government, I guess you could say. I don't want to get too intense about that, but in Kenya, it is a bigger deal than some countries. I think a lot of us were very lucky to live in first world countries. Of course, Bluejays, you and I are both in the United States, but there are a lot of countries where blockchain is far more important to the people there than it is even to us in first world countries. It will allow them a way to own their own money and their own property, and they will not be subject to governance, and it won't be subject to being taken away by anybody else. So long story short is Ava actually said, after they left, they found out that there is another EOS meetup being scheduled by the same group, and they already have I think it was about 25 or 30 members for this coming Friday in Nairobi. So that's how passionate they are about EOS, and that to me is very exciting to hear.
Yeah, and like you said, some nations they have use cases for technology that we may not, and even just transferring even the currency use case is very needed in some parts of the world.
Sure.
I've heard people using phone credits as a currency that you get on a credit, one of those prepaid cards. So that's also interesting.
And that's what a lot of folks, when it comes to currency and what could count as a currency, there are a lot of things that, like phone credits are a great example. Also in jail, sometimes cigarettes are used as a currency. I've heard of that before. Back in the old days, pretty shells were a currency. And that's why when people ask about, how is this a currency, this Bitcoin thing, it doesn't make any sense. It all depends on the value people put on it. That's what makes something a currency. And of course, in Kenya, where they value something like better governance or a chance to be free from their system, perhaps that Bitcoin or even the EOS will be more valuable to them even than us. We'll see how this all turns out. But it looks like it was a pretty interesting experience for everyone involved, both for Ian, Greg, and Ava, and all the folks who attended the meetup in Kenya. And we'll talk about Hong Kong. So there's a large meetup in Hong Kong coming up here. It is April 6th. I want to make sure and verify the date here so I don't say it incorrectly. Sheldon is heavily involved. Sheldon is great. We just spoke with him recently. He's based in Singapore, but he is working very hard for EOS. And he's trying to work hard on the developer channel, and he has been helping a lot of people learn about EOS. And so thank you to Sheldon. And the Hong Kong meetup that he is helping organize is April 6th, 2018. And of course, they have a meetup link. We will put it in the YouTube chat here so that we can, I believe, and Ian Greg is speaking at that one as well. And I heard a rumor about Brendan Bloomer, possibly. I don't want to start that too intensely, but I think Sheldon said that maybe they're trying to see if he can be available for that meetup. It is going to be a large turnout, so that should be pretty interesting. We'll see if there's some kind of big announcement coming up.
Oh, that's interesting. So yeah. Kevin, I guess we should let everybody know if you guys have a meetup and you want it to be profiled, just let us know, and we can help market it, and we can help share it, and also get your links out to the places where they have, and obviously on the EOS Go forums, we have a perfect spot, and we've had a lot of summaries there for existing meetups that have gone on, and you can see if you go to the meetup section on the EOS Go forums, a lot of the video there, a lot of the meetup links, and also you can connect with a few folks who can provide you with slides and videos that you can share as well too. So you can reach out on those forums to get that information.
And you can contact block.one as well. And if they have someone available to come speak at your meetup, they will hopefully offer someone. Of course, the block.one speakers are becoming more and more, they're in higher demand is what I'm trying to say. So there's a list of dapp developers now as well, community dapp developers who would love to speak as well at your meetups. Everpedia just recently spoke at the EOS New York meetup, which I believe was last Thursday. And speaking of EOS New York, I went to the first one back, I think it was February 8th, beginning of this month, and it was a lot of fun. And I have to say, if you are an EOS fan, there is nothing more invigorating than going and talking EOS for hours, which I know I can do pretty easily and have a great time the whole way through.
We are talking EOS for hours, Kev.
Thank you for the reminder. I get so excited I just forget what I'm doing. So I recommend it, of course, if you have the chance, go to a meetup. It's amazing. Or host your own, of course. Start one. Do what you can. But let's see. So meetups. What are we on to now? Let's talk about the Thomas Cox video. I'd love to review that and allow everybody to take a look at it.
Yeah, so let me introduce it, and then we can kick it off there, Kev. How about that?
Sure, that sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, so this is Thomas Cox and us on a sit down about when we were up in Blacksburg for shooting the Dan video and the whiteboarding videos. Thomas goes a lot into some of the theories that are in this book here, which is Elinor Ostrom. The book is called Governing the Commons. It's all about how you manage a common resource. Think about it as a basic example back in the day when we were living in villages, humans that is, and we had a neighborhood cow or a local pond in which we fished. And it's that common resource and how we as village people not the village people like that, but we as the village people manage the cows, manage the ponds, manage the fishes in the pond, and that's what all of these governance chats are about. And maybe Thomas will definitely make you think, and that's what he's gonna talk about in this video. And we're just gonna kick it off right now. Kev, did you want to say anything before we kick it off?
I mean, I know I'm excited to hear it all again. Of course, I was sitting right there, and it was a pleasure to listen to Thomas. He's a very smart guy, and he loves studying everything about governance. And the way he describes it, he has a background in engineering, but he found the human side more interesting, and so he became more interested in human governance, of course. And he is just very excited to be able to help design governance for a system like EOS. So I'm looking forward to seeing this again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's kick it off.
All right.
Well, thanks for coming here and making this happen, guys. Really appreciate it. I'm Thomas Cox, VP of Product for block.one. Kev.
I'm Kevin Wilcox, also known as Kev on the chat.
That's right.
And, we thank you for having us here.
Oh, hey, thanks for coming up.
And I'll go by Bluejays.
Outstanding. So you guys are the ones who, from my narrow perspective in life, are like leading the charge for EOS Go, the community crystallizing around a shared vision of how the community is going to launch the blockchain, because block.one's not going to.
Right.
Yeah. So there's like this, it's like a quarterback doing a flea flicker pass. It's like, okay, here comes the football. I hope there's someone there to catch it. And that's the community going to catch that ball and make a chain and make things happen.
And we feel the same way. It seems like we're being handed the keys to a rocket ship, if you will. And
oh my
we just want
gosh,
to make sure we know where all the buttons are and how to get that thing off the ground. So
yeah, there'll be a lot of very rapid learning. There's something of a fire hose here for us all, I think. Anyway, you came with a bunch of questions. I'd love to answer as many as I can, and we'll be getting Dan in here later to talk as well.
Kevin will lead off the questions for you. And
super.
Yeah.
Well, Thomas, so we are curious. You are working on the governance, the Constitution, and we understand that the community has some part in forming this Constitution.
Right.
What do you see that involving?
That is a great question, and it's currently January, so we've got a little time to puzzle it out. And my best thinking at the moment is something like this, that there's probably some sort of like, you know, when you boot up a computer, it's got the BIOS, and then that launches an operating system, that we're probably going to bake in some kind of like super minimalist constitution that you have to agree to as you log in the very first time before the community ratifies whatever constitutional elements that the community comes up with. And that'll be something, you know, what is the most basic thing that we can't launch without? And that'll go into that like proto-BIOS type constitutionette, I don't know, something really super small. And then we need to be in dialogue here through the next couple of months to figure out what does absolutely need to be in the Constitution that covers the entire blockchain and all the users all the time versus things that really should be left to self-selected groups. You know, so what should the international law be, then what should federal law be, and then what should the state law be, and then local law, and then I'm going to have a club in my local area. And then so my club might have rules inside the city, inside the state, inside the federal, inside international law. And so this idea of layering and nesting is tremendously important, because if you let the universal constitution be as open and flexible as possible, that leaves open all this creative space for people to find their own way. And I promise you, if I knew the one true way things should be, I wouldn't be here now. I'd be doing something else, making a lot more money, right? Because I would have all this brilliant knowledge. I don't think anybody can know in advance, really, what's needed. I'll tell you, you've got Elinor Ostrom's book here. This has been guiding my thinking a lot as we prepare. Because when you got a blockchain, you've got a common resource that everyone's going to share. They may not share it perfectly equally, but they are sharing it. And we can hurt each other as much as we can help each other when we share a resource. And what Elinor Ostrom did, and I'm finding this fascinating, is she studied all these organizations over the years that are instances of regular human beings figuring out ways to cooperate around their shared resources. And to me, that is, wow, let's copy this, or at least let's learn from it. And I'll give you a quick flyby of what I've picked up so far.
Sure.
Cheers.
The big three challenges are somebody has to do all of the work to set up the institution in the first place.
Okay.
There's got to be some sort of, like, imagine you've got this common pool resource, like a goose that lays golden eggs. Well, you got three problems. You need to keep the goose healthy, you need to allocate the eggs fairly, and then you need some kind of institution that everybody agrees to follow to keep the goose healthy and share the eggs, so that people don't come rampaging in from outside and go, oh, there's a goose, let's cut it open, grab the 3 eggs that are in there and skedaddle, and then you got no goose left. So those are the 3 big challenges she talks about in the book, is how do you set things up to start with, which is a ton of work. I mean, to really start an institution for the first time, ton of work. I've done it before. I've done it for trade associations and professional associations. Hard to set up a new organization. We're doing that now with our governance team, with EOSCO. Then you've got this ongoing need to keep the golden goose happy, and the ongoing need to allocate the eggs in a way that's fair to everybody, so everyone feels like they're having their interests respected. And wow, that's a ton of work. And what Ostrom found is that in the dozens and dozens of examples of successful people doing this, they're constantly tweaking things. They're constantly going, yeah, that wasn't quite it. And then the next year they'll change the rules. Like college football, every year at the end of the year, they'll go, what rules shall we change? You know, what should we change the penalty? Should this be a 15-yard penalty, not a 10-yard penalty, and so on? And so there's got to be a periodic reassessment, because promise you, you know, when we launch June 1st, we will not have like the perfect rules. We can't. We don't know what we don't know. We can't know those things.
Well, that sort of brings me to my next question, where we understand that there are many things we cannot predict.
Yep.
And it sounds like so far, block.one has done an excellent job of aligning incentives, making sure that everybody has the same general idea of where they want to go,
right?
Even though they are pursuing their own separate interests.
Yes. And see, the alignment of interests is probably the single most important challenge that anybody faces in setting up a blockchain ecosystem to encourage cooperation. Because when incentives are not aligned, behavior's not aligned. And behavior's not aligned, you get win-lose, you get lose-lose, you get people betraying each other, you get prisoner's dilemma setups, all that classic stuff. And the alignment of incentives, I think, has been the primary design principle behind distributed proof of stake and everything that Dan Larimer's tried to do with BitShares and with Steemit prior to this. And we talk about it pretty much every week. How are we aligning the incentives? I'll give you one example. We recently announced that when a token holder votes for their favorite 30 block producers, we're going to use preference voting, which is a very specific kind of voting. And so you'll be able to name your favorite 30 block producers, and whoever gets the top 21 votes, or 20 votes plus 1 rotating seat, will become the block producers. That when you cast that ballot, you have to lock up that token for 6 months. You can't then turn around and sell it the next day. So you can't like vote for your buddy and then skedaddle. You are making you are actually, by casting the ballot, you are committing to a 6-month lockup, which means you've just become a long-term shareholder. And so, okay, then I guess I better not do something that's benefits me personally in the short term and harms the golden goose.
But with the opportunity cost of locking up tokens.
Absolutely, big opportunity cost. So you better care about that outcome. You better have a real serious commitment to, yeah, I really want these block producers for the next, and you can change your vote during the 6 months, but you can't get your token out, sell it, and leave.
Right.
That's the lockup.
Aren't we concerned about that reducing voter participation if we have that lock?
Voter participation is, remember, this is not a democracy, and we're not voting on elected representatives who make rules for, who goes to jail, or whether, certain activity should be legalized. This is a property environment only. This is just about shared property. And what's the most important thing is, do we have people who take the health of the platform seriously, casting informed, careful ballots that they're willing to stand behind? And I don't want large numbers of participation. I want smart participation by people with a lot to lose, who are willing to put their money where their mouth is. So yeah, this might mean fewer ballots cast than would otherwise be cast, but they'll be cast a lot more carefully. I think that's good for the health of the platform.
Sure.
And if it's better for the health of the platform, I think that's the right way to go.
So that was one example of, in a prisoner's dilemma, you have basically a defector who does something bad for the system, and then you have something.
Yeah, it benefits himself though.
It does benefit himself, and then so it benefits himself, but not the overall collective.
Right, harms the group or harms the other person for their own benefit. It's like you go to a potluck, but you don't bring any food.
Yes, and you explain an example of rewarding cooperative actions.
Right.
Is there something to punish somebody that Ostrom talked about within the EOS software?
Right. So Ostrom has my favorite page in her book, by the way, is page 90. It's the corner's folded down on my copy, and it's highlighted like heck. And these are 8 design principles, and you'll find this on a post I'm writing right now on the EOS Go website, where I'm going to summarize this. And I believe one of our other participants, Sam, is working up like a summary of the whole book, because he got really interested in the book. But of the design principles that have to be present for a stable cooperative system to be established and maintained, one of the things you've got to have is the ability to sanction people who break rules. And what's interesting is the sanctions don't have to be very big, but they do have to be pretty quick.
Okay.
And so what we've got baked into our thinking, and I don't know that it's a requirement so much as it is a pattern and an expectation, is every contract ought to have, and we recommend this highly when you design your smart contracts, some provision either in the contract or in the context in which you buy the contract for how shall disputes be resolved. And Ostrom talks about a pattern that she sees out in the world called the self-funded dispute resolution. I think I've got that name right. Where 2 parties are in agreement on, hey, we're both going to share this meadow, and I'll graze my sheep and you graze your sheep, and we're going to agree in advance to graze an equal number, because we roughly have equal size herds. And if there's ever a problem between us, we agree in advance that we're going to pay Bluejays here to sort it out between us. And here's our written agreement, and we'll both pay half the fee to him for his ruling, and then whatever he says, we'll both agree to.
Right.
Okay? Okay, great. And so we have to set it all up in advance of how will we handle it if we have a fight.
Is this an arbitration process?
Right. You're setting up in advance who will be our arbitrator, or which arbitration service will we consult.
I see.
And the fact that we'll both pay for it. And if the cost of arbitration is low, and it's quick enough, and the sanctions substantial enough, we'll probably never need it.
I see.
And I know we've talked about this before in the governance Telegram channel,
right,
where we are wondering about if the cost becomes too high to achieve arbitration, then won't that sort of push out smaller actors?
If the cost of arbitration is excessive, then people will be wronged and they won't seek redress, and then that just reward the person who wronged them.
Right.
That's like when someone charges 5 cents on your credit card that you didn't authorize, and maybe you don't notice it, or you notice it but you don't bother to do anything about it. And if they're dinging a couple million people for 5 cents each, and no one ever gets mad and calls up and traces it down, they're just making money and they're ripping people off, and then it's like a very small tick on a very large dog, and they just sit there and they feast on us. So yeah, it's got to be quick and easy to seek redress. That's crucial. And we'll do everything in our power to make that possible. And communities are going to need to do that for themselves also. I mentioned that you might have it in your smart contract that there's arbitration, or more likely, you'll have a license. And you say, okay, so here's the license, and when you put your token into my smart contract, you're agreeing to be bound by my license, which says that in a dispute, you and I agree that we will use one of these 3 arbitration services, and you pick it, and you put your token in, you pick one of the 3, and then blah, 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 blah. And then poof, and the arbitrators are going to be out there marketing themselves as we're quick and we're inexpensive and we're really fair and here's our track record.
Is that one of the ways that we can use any token for, is to settle an arbitration dispute?
Oh, I think that if I were an arbitrator or I were providing arbitration services, I would totally take EOS's payment. And I would find people who had a track record of being really fair, and I'd find something like CA CERT is an example of a group that had its own internal dispute resolution through arbitration. All their training's online, by the way. Look it up, CACERT.
Okay.
Terrific group. And yeah, oh, another one, Open Bazaar. I don't know if you guys know Open Bazaar. They're a blockchain-based sort of shopping experience. And they've got this baked into their platform as well, that if any two parties have a dispute, they do a multi-sig, 2 of 3, and then they pick an arbitrator from a pool of arbitrators. And if you're a member of the platform, you can volunteer your services as an arbitrator for a small fee. And apparently it works for them.
Oh, what did you think of that, Kev? That was certainly a awesome Q&A, and I was catching up on my Ostrom while we were doing that. It says page 90 is his favorite part, so.
Yeah, and listening to Thomas is it's a joy because he does a good job of really bringing in other analogies, like you heard him talk about college football, the golden goose, of course, from Elinor Ostrom's book. Arbitration is a big topic. He did go into it in some detail, which I appreciated. I know a lot of folks have worried about arbitration. To me, having small actors pushed out of arbitration is an issue. I'm wondering if there's some way the blockchain will actually pay for arbitration, if there will be some kind of a fund that will help with that, or if it will be totally free market where all the actors involved must pay for the arbitration, where that could become something similar to like the US, where you have people who just sue because they know the other party can't necessarily afford a good lawyer. The next thing you know, you have a situation that isn't beneficial for the small players. I mean, maybe I'm getting carried away. I want to hear your thoughts there.
Those are good ideas. I mean, so you're thinking a arbitration service outside of the blockchain, where parties sort of contract a private arbitrator to dispute, to resolve their dispute, and have those sort of deals or negotiations applied back onto the blockchain, or the blockchain could, as a part of their inflation funding, not only fund block producers but fund arbitrators as well. Is that the sort of
That's
options?
what I'm wondering. Yeah, I think so. And it sounds like, I know the EOS governance channel, which if you haven't spent any time in there and you are interested in governance, you should definitely check it out. There are some very thorough conversations in there. You'll talk to Thomas and you'll talk to Ian Grigg and a lot of other very smart people in the chat. But arbitration, I mean, from my personal opinion, I would like to see it on the blockchain in terms of funded by the blockchain itself. And that way everybody has a fair shot and nobody's trying to abuse. I feel like it'd be harder to abuse that system. However, I don't want to argue this topic too much because you can find plenty of that over in the EOS governance channel. I'd like to talk about the golden goose situation though.
The golden goose and gaming the system. I mean,
Yeah.
Wherever humans are, we're going to find a way to game things. There are people who find glitches and ways to get past things, and when it comes down to it, the only ones who can protect us from gaming systems are humans and arbitrators. And and sometimes the spirit of the law and the letter of the law are two different things, and that's, lawyers have made a career out of it. Lawyers have made a lot of careers out of these things. I think at some point in my past, I was looking at dispute resolution as a field, and it is a very extensive field: conflict and dispute resolution, and even mediation. Mediation right now, in the practice, you can hire mediators to settle disputes among, for example, in the workplace, between the employer and the employee. And mediation is a big sort of save over having to hire lawyers over hiring lawyers. So that's the same thing. I mean, I don't know. Like you said, there's a lot bigger experts in the field than us, but it is going to be a very big field in this area when you have these decentralized autonomous collectives or companies or communities. I've actually heard all of those different variations. Do you know, Kevin, is what in a DAC, is it a community, a collective, or a company?
So the original, Dan is the one who came up with the term DAC. It's a decentralized autonomous company, is the way he described it. However, it's now been known more commonly as a DAO, D-A-O, which is decentralized organization. I think a collective really describes it well myself. I think company is, a company is a strong word, and I think corporation is another word that kind of rhymes with company in my mind. But I'd like to go back to when we talk about arbitration. Thomas Cox mentioned an open bazaar example. Open Bazaar is a decentralized marketplace. It works. It's available now, and they have a system in place where, let's see, the arbitrator. I'm on their website right now. It says you have an arbitrator is hired, and most of the time, for most payments, when you go back and forth, you don't need an arbitrator, right? Someone receives the item, everything works out. There's no moderator needed. The moderator is only hired to bring in, only brought in when normally you may have, for example, if you have a dispute resolution, you just file it with your credit card or with your bank, and you'd say, look, these guys didn't pay me, or you go through PayPal. You say, these guys sent me a broken item. I would like a refund. And the bank will charge it back because they want to keep your business, or PayPal will do it for you. And the merchant doesn't have any chance to say their side. There's no back and forth between there. It's basically all customer, and the merchant has no chance to state their case. So in the open bazaar model, the moderator hears both sides and only accepts a fee if, let's see.
Both sides are happy, I guess.
If both sides are happy, right?
That sounds like a win-win, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a very simple example. I mean, obviously with a blockchain like EOS, where you have all these different dApps and there's all kinds of different use cases far beyond just buying and selling, there will be far more complicated issues that will come up. And actually, that brings me, it's a little bit off topic, but I'd like to bring up the scam airdrop for EOS. Please, there is no such thing as an EOS airdrop. The EOS token will never be airdropped, so please don't fall for any of these scams. They're coming in all kinds of different styles. There's a Google form they want you to fill out. They want you to join a scam Telegram channel. Just make sure that there is never an EOS airdrop. There will be tokens built on EOS, like Everpedia, and those tokens will be airdropped on the EOS distribution list, but the actual EOS, never. So be very careful, be vigilant. Going back to Thomas Cox, Bluejays, what else did you take from the video?
Yeah, so again, I see we have this pool, like Thomas talked about the golden goose. Now, I want you to sort of help me understand this, Kevin. Is the golden goose the EOS blockchain? Is that what it is?
The golden goose is basically laying these golden eggs, and it can only lay them so fast. And then if the goose is pushed, like for example, if the goose is stressed so that it lays 2 eggs per week as opposed to the healthy 1 egg per week, I mean, sure, you'll get more eggs more quickly. You'll get eggs more quickly, I should say, but you will wear the goose out faster, and the goose will not, in the long run, will not produce as many eggs. So what you've done is you've stressed the goose, and you've actually put a harm on the network. You can think of it like a block producer keeping too many resources for themselves, right? And the block producer is not helping the community, and therefore, in the long run, the block producer is more of a value taker, I guess you could say,
yeah.
a value seizer. So I
yeah,
guess
some people just like one hard-boiled egg for breakfast, and some people want a 5-egg omelet. Is that it?
I think you're. I think is that what you do? You golden eggs? You eat them? I didn't know that.
Oh man, no! I keep the whole thing is solid, right? So.
Do they sell those at Costco?
No, they don't. They're free range golden goose, free range, right?
I only like my geese's free range, man. They're gonna be flying free, walking free, all the freedoms. But
right.
Anyway, we get off topic too easily there. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, that's okay. So I guess we can start wrapping up, Kev. Or did you want to also have an extra talk about one of the Dan videos that we had? I think one of the questions that come up recently was the quality, block producer quality and voting, and how are we going to make block producers have this sort of quality level that we all want in our ecosystem. So
it's a free market competition, and so really we need to make sure that we are helping to promote that competition, which partially is the reason why we are asking everybody to start submitting their names to our report. It's why we are announcing that we're publishing a community-wide report, which will put a little bit of pressure on the block producers to step up their game, right? I mean, make a website, put out a public presence and release your specs, start letting people know what you're up to. Some block producers who are sort of front runners, if you will, the ones who are very visible right now in the ecosystem, they have nothing to compete against, right? They can't see what everyone else is doing. So it benefits them because they can step their game up. And also it helps all the community see what's going on in terms of the block producer options. And then if the community, if there's somebody who is on the fence about whether they want to run, they can say, oh, look at that guy. I think I could probably do better than that. I'll try too, right? I'll get my friend involved and we're going to start a company and we'll run for block producers. So competition is always good in a healthy ecosystem, in a free market, which is what EOS essentially is. And that's why we're offering. So, and the deadline is March 6th. It's going to be 11:59 Universal Time, UTC. And of course, that'll be announced more in the coming week. And if you submit before then, you will be included in the first report. We don't know entirely what exactly that report will have in it. It may just end up being a list of names. It may have some criteria as well. We are trying to develop that. Again, I know we said that earlier, but we need help trying to develop that criteria that can be objective and fair for everyone. So please help us out with that. And of course, going back to Charles, they're looking for block producer technical specs that they would like to know from block.one. So if you have some specs, you have questions about what specs you need to know from block.one, please make sure you submit that. It's on the forums. It's on the block producer discussion part of the forums, which is forums.eosgo.io. Bluejays, what else would you like to add?
We need to have also, if you're interested in getting EOS updates, things that are very relevant, very close to we have our ear to the ground, and just sign up for the announcements channel, the EOS Go announcements channel. Not to mention the forums where we have a whole bunch of discussion and discourse going on. That's the only things I'd like to mention. And finally, there is also a t-shirt design contest out there.
Right.
And this is going to be fun for the artists out there. On Steemit or Busy, wherever, you can contribute to this design contest, and the winner will get some Steam and some other second and third place prizes as well. We've already had a few entries, and we would like to. We will be promoting it again today and tomorrow, and we will also be accepting these designs that are going to be on a T-shirt eventually one day, just like yours, Kevin. There. I mean, this was our first T-shirt, right? Like, I think we've moved on since that. I got mine too. There we go.
Oh boy. This is the original design. As you guys have seen, it's changed. It's more colorful now. It's more beautiful. We have a long ways to go when it comes to beautiful, so we're working on it. And we just want to make sure that we remind everybody, EOSGO it's a neutral organization, and everybody is welcome to help out. So EOSGO is about strengthening EOS. It's about helping with the launch. It's about after the launch, helping the community get stronger. And so that would include things like marketing EOS outside of the community to help people get involved with EOS. All the people are in Ethereum right now. There's a lot of projects that could come over and be successful on EOS. So if you'd like to help in any way and you're not sure what to do, please reach out to myself or Bluejays on Telegram. You can reach out to us on the forums, on email, admin@eosgo.io, all sorts of different ways.
And Kevin, for those people coming over and they're just getting started, there's a ton of resources on our forums as well. There's a getting started pinned post almost in most categories, actually developers in general, and more to be added soon, but there's a ton of resources and links there that will definitely help you out.
And we even have there's a jobs board too, where there's an opportunities area where you can introduce yourself. You can say, hey, here are my skills. What can I do to help? I love EOS and I want to get involved. What can I do? That's what I said about 2 months ago, and here I am now. So all kinds of different ways. We think EOS, and actually Dan described it himself in the Q&A video, the sit-down Q&A. He said, EOS is like a whole new government. It's like a whole new country, if you will, in terms of it's got its own economy, it has its own governance. So there'll be all kinds of different opportunities in the ecosystem. So get involved if you love EOS, and obviously we think it'll be a big deal. So we will wrap this up, and we thank everybody for joining us.
Yep. Thanks everyone. And one last thing, upcoming segments. Kevin mentioned it, alluded to it earlier. We'll have like a crypto noob segment possibly, but we'll definitely be having block producer profiles and more dapp developers come on here. So if you want to be profiled, and we've already have people linked up and lined up. So if you want to be profiled, get in on it and let us know, and we can talk about your project on here.
Sure. Yep. And we will see you guys in a week, and we'll see you in Telegram chat. Thank you.
Signing off. Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah.